We don't know the real Socrates. What remains are distortions, character assassinations by the power structures that killed him, and Plato's mythologized fabrications serving his own philosophical agenda. In other words, Plato's version of Socrates became more than a man. He became a vessel for metaphysical doctrines like the theory of forms, which, whether sincerely held or strategically deployed, have been used for centuries to justify hierarchical thinking and control narratives about truth. It can be argued that Plato, intentionally or not, shaped a vision of reality that elevates abstract ideals over lived experience, which was a move that has lent itself to both awe and abuse. Whether or not he was deliberately deceptive is impossible to know. However, what we do know is this: many of his claims, including the existence of immaterial forms as the highest reality, are not only controversial, they're unprovable yet unfalsifiable, and preposterous to consider when given the context of modern knowledge of our minds, the universe, and our subjective experience within it. Despite this, Plato's shadow still looms over nearly every idealist tradition that has followed. Xenophon's more pragmatic, disciplined portrayal of Socrates might seem more psychologically grounded, but it fares no better historically. In contrast to Plato, Xenophon's Socrates comes across less as a disruptive philosopher and more as a respectable life coach who offers practical advice and accepts death with a serene shrug. Xenophon's sanitized version lacks the sharp irony, intellectual provocation, and moral danger that define Plato's Socrates. The relentless questioner who dismantles assumptions, embarrasses elites, and inspires volatile followers like Alcibiades and Critias. As Gregory Vlastos argued, Xenophon's account refutes itself. If Socrates were as harmless as Xenophon depicts, there would have been no grounds for his trial. By contrast, the early Platonic dialogues, at least before Plato's system overtakes the figure of his teacher, offer the most plausible glimpse of the historical Socrates. This was a man whose questions made him dangerous. To the contrary, Xenophon's version may reflect how some wished to remember him, but not why he was condemned. This matters less than you think. Whether the words and thoughts came from Socrates, Xenophon, or Plato is unimportant. Instead, what matters is whether the thoughts can withstand the weight of reality. A person's biography has no bearing on the truth of ideas attributed to them. If the ideas hold power, they transcend their vessel. That said, there is a critical consideration. To truly understand the ideas from any thinker, one often must psychologize the author. As Friedrich Nietzsche argued, philosophy is rarely disinterested. It is a confession of its creator, shaped by temperament, physiology, and unspoken need. This ties into the debate regarding emotions and cognition perfectly. If all cognition arises from our emotional reaction, we cannot understand the idea without understanding the thinker's emotions toward the thought, whether conscious or subconscious. Often this takes deep psychological analysis. It therefore doesn't matter whether what is written by Xenophon or even Plato truly originated from Socrates or from them. What matters is the truth in the thoughts themselves. Ideas stand independently of their purported source. What makes the Socratic model we're studying isn't biographical accuracy, but the framework for existential resilience it provides. Confronting mortality without flinching, facing injustice without breaking, and maintaining clarity when systems collapse around you. He represents existential confrontation without collapse, courage against injustice, clarity before death, and integrity without metaphysical delusion. This isn't philosophy as academic exercise, it's training for survival. The authorities didn't execute Socrates for abstract theorizing. They killed him because his questions threatened power. This isn't ancient history. I recognize that I too may be forced to drink the hemlock, not for the final thought work coming out later in 2026, certainly not for Stress Act, and not for Manufacturing Minds, also releasing 2026. But for future works already nearing completion that push beyond permitted boundaries of societal questioning. If these ideas aren't launched with sufficient force, they risk erasure, distortion, misuse, and I may face potential physical elimination, not just reputational destruction. Xenophon's Socrates demonstrates existential hormesis in action, deliberate, repeated exposure to hardship, injustice, and mortality as a pathway to unbreakable inner strength. Philosophy wasn't theorizing, it was psychological armor against real threats. Socratic questioning wasn't intellectual entertainment, it was strength training for the mind and spirit. Existential resilience isn't built through comfortable theorizing, mythologizing, or aspirational quotes. It's forged only through direct confrontation with what most terrifies you, the raw, unfiltered truth of existence. The greatest discomfort produces the greatest strength, but only if you're willing to drink it down to the last drop.